3, 2, 1. Rumple pump. Rumple pimple pump. Tiny stump. Welcome to the rump. That was a lyric from Wicked. I'm Adam from Your Movie
Emilia.
Sucks. Sorry, that was from what?
Emilia Pérez, I thought.
Oh, no.
It's the best song in Emilia
That was
Pérez.
from Wicked. I'm Adam from Your Movie Sucks. This is Sardonicast.
I'm Alex from Rumple Pimple Pump. That's not all.
That's not all.
Sorry, I was trying to hand it to you. Like, this is so like, it's just like the Ralph days. It just like falls apart when there's like three. Like, we just can't do the intro.
I do my
for some
part
reason.
great.
Hi, this is Jake from Man Carrying Thing and Woman Carrying Man, and I'm here today to talk movies.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
See, that was pretty good.
Got there in the end.
What was this about Emilia Pérez? Do you want to talk about it? Everybody's mad.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to say fuck you.
Oh,
Yeah,
me?
get the boxing
Okay.
gloves. Let's go.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? One of the silliest comments on the previous video was someone saying, "I don't think Adam's even going to talk about it because this is his podcast and he doesn't want to be the person with the opinion that people disagree with." What the fuck?
They ever listen to this?
Have they ever seen me on the internet at any point ever? And also within that episode, we say, "Hey, we're gonna have a larger discussion about this later."
Yeah, no, we're trying to silence you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We recently brought on a third host so that we could argue more,
Yeah.
so we can have opinions that are not the same, right? And various.
And so
reasons,
far,
but-
we have argued zero amount.
Well,
Yeah.
here we go, everybody. Emilia Pérez.
That's always a place to start.
Yeah.
What? State your thesis. State your position. We're gonna ding the bell. Each person has 30 seconds for an intro statement. No, I don't care. Just have a regular conversation. What did y'all think? I watched your video, Jake. I watched many videos on this film. Alex, I know the least about your opinion.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I guess I'm way more leaning towards Jake's opinion than yours, I think, Adam. To me, it was a huge swing and a miss. And man, God, where do you even start plucking at with this one? I wrote like pages and pages for this one because it's just like,
Nice.
oof, where do you even start? I think the way this conversation has gone about this film is like almost exploded to not quite on the same level, but like almost like a Last Jedi type, just what are we even talking about? Like conversation. But I do think the criticisms, especially from like the communities I'm not a part of, that being like the trans and Mexican community, the things they're saying about it, I cannot disagree with. I think there's something quite cheesy and inauthentic about the film. But honestly, my biggest issue at the end of it all is that it's this ironically confused identity movie where like it can't settle on what it wants to be, in my opinion, and it's a musical, and the music is just, I just can't stand it. Like, I don't think there's like a single good song in here, and that's kind of where my jumping off point is. Do you kind of feel similarly, Jake?
I think you basically have it down there. Yeah, I mean, at the heart of it, it's a musical, and I personally found the music very grating and obnoxious. But also, I think a big issue, and I've been thinking about this movie way more than I should, and I think a big issue here is that it started out as an opera. Jacques Audiard wrote this as an opera, and I think that on stage, there's a level of abstraction and a lack of reality that isn't present when you film something, and it's filmed to be very like literal. It's not super like it's supposed to look like Mexico. It's supposed to look like, even if it doesn't sometimes, but it's supposed to look kind of realistic. And I think that makes all of the leaps in logic and the big character changes and all these things that are supposed to be expressionistic feel very lame and off. So I think that maybe it would work better on stage. I don't know. I personally don't think I'd like it regardless. But ultimately, also, to me, it comes down to what the story is about just fundamentally, which is a a Mexican drug lord who is trans, and the way that character is handled feels, I mean, I'm not going to even get into the representation and all of that, because there's other people who are way more better equipped to talk about that and have a lot of good. Jesse Gender had a good video out about that, but I thought that it's just hard to feel anything for this character, knowing that she basically is like a murderer and doesn't really make any significant internal changes except for the obvious external ones. So, I mean, we'll get into the story and stuff later, but that's like, I think, at the heart of why I don't like this movie.
That's very interesting. See, I watched this at TIFF before there was any, huge backlash. The audiences at festivals enjoyed the film, like, more or less, generally positive, both critic responses and audience responses. It's not just a disconnect between audiences and critics there, although now it does seem to be more like critic / industry versus general audiences. What I find interesting about this is my interpretation of, like, the trans character. There was never any point where I thought, like, oh yeah, the film wants us to think that she is redeemed. I thought that throughout the film, they were presenting her as untrustworthy. That, sure, they didn't, like, do a huge psychological deep dive and, like, spell it out and address, like, oh yeah, I'm still such a bad person, sort of thing. But, she continued to use dirty money to fund her charity work. She continued to be deceptive. She continued to lie to her family. She continued to manipulate. There are even scenes where, at the end of the argument, where she straight up physically assaults Selena Gomez's character. It zooms in on her and you hear this kind of, like, sinister low tone in the soundtrack. Things like that. I've heard a lot of people saying that the film is, like, endorsing the character and presenting things as though her transition is to absolve her of criticisms. And, even at the very end, there's characters that kind of, like, throw a parade in her honor. But these are characters that didn't know she was a drug lord. They didn't know she was a murderer. So in my perspective, I saw all of that as, like, oh, okay, it's not like a black and white sort of telling you how to feel movie. This is just a very bizarre story with characters that are not moral and are not supposed to be taken as moral. There might be some gray areas, like, sure, she is still a person that would like to be with her family, and it's up to you as the viewer to decide whether or not that's a legitimate thing to feel for her, or whether or not she deserves to have her family in her life. But I honestly, that's one of the things I liked about the movie, is that traditionally we see this idea, this pervasive idea in any piece of media that includes something like a trans character, where the expectation, especially if it's like a festival movie, especially if it's like almost a Hollywood movie, even though this technically wasn't a Hollywood movie, people are calling it that. There's the expectation that if you have a trans character in the film, that they're supposed to be this, like, oh, goody two shoes, sort of, like, not even really addressing them as human beings, sort of thing. And I like that this was a film that didn't feel like it had to do that. I like that this film was something where, oh, a trans person can be morally questionable, a bad person, somebody with a troubled past that doesn't absolve themselves. A trans person can be a character where they aren't telling you how to feel about them. That's part of what I liked about it. And sure, in terms of, like, the representation, it's not like the best representation for trans people. There's plenty of, weird misconceptions and stereotypes that exist within the character, a la it being, I don't know, created by an 80-year-old French guy. but in terms of, like, I don't know, the intent behind it, I don't think that there was anything particularly, like, malicious in terms of how he presented the character, and yeah, I don't think it was explicitly telling us how to feel about her, and that's kind of something I enjoyed.
Yeah, it didn't feel intentionally mean-spirited to me, but it did read to me as sort of a shortcut for sympathy. I felt like that was kind of what the film was getting at, and it was riding this line of like, yeah, this is like a magical realism operatic thing on one hand, but is also like a straight melodrama on the other, and it felt like I just couldn't decide how I wanted to wield specifically that transition and what it was saying with that. And what particularly got me thinking about that was I was reading interviews with the director, and what inspired him, and he was talking about this novel that he was partially inspired by. There was a chapter he was asked about. I'll read this part of the interview. What was it about the character in the novel that sparked your interest? To which he said, one chapter set in Mexico featured a very violent cartel boss who wanted to transition. What struck me was the person, representative of pure violence, of the most absolute patriarchy, having a desire for femininity. It was that paradox that drew me. So I think that was like the spark of what made him go down this line. But I feel like the absurdity of it being a cartel mob boss and the way it's presented in the film, it was like wielding the emotional sophistication of something like 13 Reasons Why to me. It just did not work from that angle. Like, it was really clumsy in the way it was bringing about that character in particular, and the way it was using what it was saying with it. Because at the end of it, the ultimate point seemed to be sort of a Godfather 3 situation where it's like you can't outrun your past, and it's going to catch up to you at some point. And the way it wields the trans experience in there seems almost glossed over, with just like the surgery part of it just kind of being glossed over and it being like one scene. And yeah, it's more about like the crime angle and, I don't know, trying to get to this half redemption sympathy angle, and then what they're saying about it after the fact, what this character's supposed to resemble and how they're talking about it. I just don't, what was it? Audiard said, wants Emilia to be an inspiring figure of hope, which I just don't feel like that's how the film.
Sorry, he said in an interview that he wants Emilia to be an inspiring figure of hope.
Yeah, when he was collecting one of the awards, one of the many awards it's already won.
Which?
I didn't know which town in particular. I just noted down the quote.
Okay. I'm going to need a source for that one.
Ooh.
I can find it.
Yeah. I'm not saying I don't believe you. I'm saying I need a source. Because there's, unfortunately, because of the nature of how people are having these conversations, there's a lot of like uncharitable, out of context, either mistranslations or misquotes, or just like things that people didn't say that people just keep repeating, that it's like, okay, when you look up the source, it's like, oh, they didn't really say that. So you have to be careful about quotes for this film. It's funny.
Even like that particular quote aside, though, the kind of drama that's been unfortunately attached to this movie from that lead actress does mirror that message, whether it be true or not, and just how that has gone down, and all of the quotes and the tweets and the interview. It's turned into this huge controversy that I don't know, it kind of like is ironically going against what I feel like they were trying to make the film mean.
What do you mean?
If they want it to be more of a
like inspiration,
taking this character and have it be a inspirational, kind of more sympathetic angle, which I feel like they were kind of going for, and they wanted this character to be inspiring in some way or another, I just don't feel like that comes across, and it feels contradictory.
No, I mean,
and messy and all over the place.
I didn't interpret it that way, so it's funny if you said that in a interview or awards ceremony. But yeah, I mean, anyone's experience can be whatever you want with a movie, as in death of the artist is a thing that exists. But
yeah, I kind of felt the same way with Civil War. When that came out, I thought the director was making all these statements about what the movie was about, and I was like, no, I disagree. I think you don't understand your own movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, with Emilia Pérez, I think, Alex, you make really good points about how it feels like the premise would be really interesting. Like, this drug lord is like trans and wants to transition. What would that mean? Like, what does that mean in that culture with the patriarchy, everything like that? But I don't think the movie really is interested in that, and in a lot of ways is trying to like just deify the image of this character who And I think the transition and being trans is treated as just kind of like a switch that you flip, and it's just like sudden transformation. It's almost more of like a metaphor, and treated like a
Yeah.
metaphor for a transformation rather than a literal thing. I mean, she literally has like one operation and gets like every single surgery
Yeah.
done in
Yeah,
one
exactly.
single night. You know, it's very unrealistic, and I believe that it's because there was little research put into the film, but also because I detect a sense of a lack of curiosity about what's actually here, and I think that to use it as a metaphor it can be fine, but I thought that the movie was clumsy as a result, and it wasn't enough for me to buy what the movie's trying to sell emotionally. Yeah.
Yeah, see, I just I guess a lot of how you experience the film can come down to like what you believe the intent of the director or the artists are. Um when I, knowing that he essentially just took like a character from one chapter of like a different short French novel and was like, "Oh, that's cool." Like I kind of want to have a drug lord character that transitions. Like I'll make something interesting out of that. I don't see Jacques Audiard's intentions as being ones where he was looking to make like a thorough, deep exploration on, um, whether it be social issues like transness or Mexican culture. And he stated in interviews plenty of times now, like I've got one of the tabs open, that he was never trying to make any sort of like deep commentary or statements about Mexico, right? And so I would assume that the same goes for the trans experience, is that he was essentially just using like a scenario as like a concept to be like, oh, okay, there could be some drama that comes out of this, or particularly with my experience of the movie and it being so like weird and zany and wacky and like absurdist, like clearly absurdist at so many points. Um, I don't. I feel like for me personally, there is a bit of leeway when it comes to the concept of realism or the concept of authenticity when you're going for something that has the intended effect of like, oh wow, that's happening, sort of thing, or oh wow, that's really wacky, or like it's kind of something where like you summarize the sequence of events in the film and it's like, oh wow, nobody could have you just created a new sentence basically. Like nobody could have predicted the plot would go in this way. Like it's one of those things that I enjoy. Something like spoilers for Ralph Bakshi's Wizards. Like that's a movie where I enjoy the fact that the summary of the movie is like, okay, you have this like fantasy world animated 2D animated film where there's like a really large-breasted fairy, but then Hitler's come back, and then all of the wizard and like hobbits and stuff have to stop Hitler, but then when the big showdown happens, the wizard just pulls out a gun, like things like that. It's the same type of vibe for me. And sure, Wizards isn't a movie that is consistently throughout going for comedic sensibilities. It's just one of those, like, on paper you have a very bizarre concept, and I like things that are unique. I like things that are weird. I liked its approach to what it was doing narratively, not necessarily how groups were represented. To me, I found that, not like I don't care, but in, like Alex said, what did you say? You said I can't disagree with the minority groups
The trans
complaining
and the
about this
Mexican
movie.
community.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
their experience. I agree. I can't disagree with that either. I also can't agree with it because it's just not within my realm of understanding, right? So in the same sense, like, if you were to ask a colorblind person to comment on the color grading of a film, the guy can't agree with it nor disagree with it because they have no perception of it, right? I have no perception of Mexican culture. I live in Canada. I don't even live in the States, right? So any criticisms on how the culture is portrayed, or the discrepancies between accents and whether or not some sounded like Mexican accents or Dominican Mexican or American Mexican or just plain American accents, or butchering the lingo, the phrasing, all of those things. I can neither agree with it nor disagree with it because I literally don't have that perspective. And that's fine. And part of the beauty of there being more than one person on the planet with more than one brain is that you can talk to other people and go, oh, here's these things that I have no concept for, but you do. And here's these things that you have no concept for, but I do. That's how they influenced our experience of the movie. And that's interesting. And you don't need to hate each other about it. I'm not talking to you guys because you are reasonable. I'm talking to the audience here. There's no reason to get like so serious and vindictive and vitriolic over just the notion of different brains existing, like some people are going to be perceptive to some things and some people aren't, and that's totally fine.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you there, but I also think like your perspective about how like the kind of chaotic nature of it is what's appealing to you, and that it isn't trying to kind of make statements about these communities. I disagree with that because I feel like the movie at multiple points is really trying to say something. Like it kind of goes out of its way at certain points to feel like a didactic message, like that one part where she's talking to the surgeon and she's like, changing the body changes society, changing society changes the soul, changing blah blah blah. And it just becomes like a word salad, and after that I'm like, okay, you're trying to say something, but I have no idea what that meant. I don't know what this is.
Like, depending on how. Sorry, go for it.
No. That's just one example, and then later on in the movie, when it feels like it just becomes a different movie all of a sudden, when Emilia Pérez does the the organization to try to find all these bodies, these dead people, which she ostensibly had some part in their deaths,
Oopsie.
but it becomes it's just like becomes a. Like, oh, this is a topical thing. This is about Mexico. This is a problem, and we're highlighting this, and that's a good thing. And that's kind of what I got from it. So I kind of wish that it was more like how you described, like just a crazy, like sleazy, like more stupid movie, because instead I feel like it's trying to do a little bit of both, and I didn't, I don't know, I didn't buy that.
Sure. Yeah, it's fair to say that it's trying to do both. But yeah, I don't take the if it's making larger statements, I don't weigh that so largely in terms of the experience, because I just don't feel like that was its overall goal. I literally feel like it's like the equivalency of like someone making a horror movie and they're like, okay, what if it was like Nazis in snow, right? They took something that exists in reality and they were like, okay, what if this dynamic existed? What could I get out of that? And sure, it's not a horror movie. There is more artistry to the presentation and filmmaking. They have like legitimate actors and performances. There's like a much more professional production. It's a fucking Cannes movie. Cannes Film Festival, not CON, although some people might disagree. Sure, like that there are definitely elements that do imply that kind of feel like it belongs in the category of like grand statement, very serious movies. But I do think that with it riding the line of like it being both, I think that it's just one of those situations where someone's experience with the film, you can kind of get either out of it depending on what kind of person you are, depending on how you experience the film. a horror movie where they decide Nazis are the villain. They're not necessarily making statements about Nazis. And sure, there could be points in the movie where they're like Nazis are bad, and that's a statement.
Mhm.
But I don't think that it was trying to be that deep, despite it. Sure, yes, having a let's call it intentionally progressive attitude or overall outlook. Like it wasn't. It's a movie that wasn't like going out of its way to be like, trans people suck and they're bad, sort of thing. And I think that the intention of the director was just, let's see what comes out of this drama. And he, didn't do his best in terms of what he could have researched and the authenticity in terms of portraying different cultures and different minority groups. Undoubtedly. Would it have been a better movie if he did? Yes. But I just, it's a fucking 80-year-old French guy. I'm the type of person where, as somebody that belongs to different minority groups myself, I don't know. Personally, if I see someone that is confused but their heart's in the right place, I don't see that as a bad thing. I just see that as like, oh, you're old. Right? So maybe that's kind of influencing my perspective. That's just kind of how I live in my day-to-day
Doesn't that
life.
make that lack of focus or research or dedication to the concept kind of make it feel more performative, though? Like it's being labeled as trans crash, for example. Like that's kind of sticking.
I disagree with that.
Green Book comparisons are coming up too.
No, those movies were
and
much
I don't
more
know,
preachy. Way more preachy. Like
I don't
Crash
know, this
had
movie. Sorry, go ahead.
comparing Crash to Emilia Pérez in terms of like the messaging and the preachiness. Like Crash was only about the messaging. Like that was the entire there was nothing else about the movie that was a goal at all. like literally the movie was like a fucking PSA. Whereas Emilia Pérez was like, okay, let's make an anti-musical, right? Let's make something weird and wacky, and we'll have unexpected plot turns and twists of things that you might not anticipate. We'll do some weird subversive shit.
What do you mean by anti-musical? I just thought it was a musical.
No, this is you can actually look up interviews with there's an interview of what's her name from Live, Die, Repeat. Emily Blunt is interviewing Zoe Saldana, and Zoe Saldana talks about how Jacques Audiard was very explicit about it being an anti-musical. He said, okay, musicals exist in one very specific way. We don't want it to be like overindulgent. Not every single, we don't want musical numbers that have like this cliched build up and go into this, like over performative. I'm lacking the vocabulary, but I'm hoping you get what I'm going at. And this is one of a lot of people's criticisms with the film. They'll complain like, oh, the song just starts and then it ends, right? But I kind of like that it does that. I kind of like that it is a very weird and unique approach on musicals that characters, if we were to give an example, like when the drug lord is explaining their plan, and it's literally just like a rhythmic low thumping, like thump 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 thump, and he's kind of like whisper rapping. He's rhythmically whispering what he is saying to the character, and it might as well be dialogue, but it's kind of a song, but it's kind of not really a song. It's existing in this kind of like halfway place. I like that it did that. I like that it's kind of like melding the narrative aspects with the musical aspects and having something that isn't explicitly one or the other. And I know that that's a criticism that a lot of people have, but I look at the film and I go like, okay, that's intentional. Like people complain about the whisper singing. Okay, well, in the context of the scene, the character would be whispering. There's another whisper singing scene where it's Emilia and Zoe Saldana's character at a table. In the context of that scene, they're having a private conversation. They don't want others to hear. Of course, they're going to have their voices be more held back, right? This isn't Wicked. This isn't insert Broadway musical here. Not the performances and how people sing and how the songs are written are intentionally not trying to be that. And it's funny because I actually realized over the course of this controversy being a thing and people being like, what the fuck, Adam? There's no good songs in this movie. I realized that most of my favorite musicals are kind of anti-musicals. Like Dancer in the Dark is like an anti-musical in a sense. Very weird.
That's wonderful music.
It has wonderful music, but very atypical, right? It's not the type of music that you go like, oh yeah, if you enjoyed Wicked, you'll enjoy Dancer in the Dark. And especially with, the pacing and structure of it and how songs appear in the film. Sure, those songs are much more fleshed out. In Dancer in the Dark, each song has like a 3-minute plus runtime or whatever. And they feel like full songs. But I like that in Emilia Pérez, they are kind of like, most of the songs are kind of like if a character had a thought in a scene and it was expressed in some sort of musical way without needing to feel like it fits in the mold of like, okay, here's verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, right? Not every song needs to have that. I like that it's just kind of like a thought of a song, and then it never appears again. I like that. That's something that I find kind of cool in terms of like its approach. And I understand that's not for everybody. I understand that, especially after seeing a lot of the criticisms of Emilia Pérez, I've watched a lot of people's videos. People talk about it in the language of the expectations of musicals that they've seen. They're talking about it in terms of like, here's the I Want song, and here's the, right? This isn't like other musicals, and it's not trying to be like other musicals. It's trying to be weird and different. And I've got a lot more to say about the choices that they made in terms of like how they recorded this as well. But I could go on forever. So
what you're saying just kind of read to me is more as like half-baked, because it's not really giving you anything of what you want for this story to connect. Yeah, I would, as Jake said, I'd want this to be more campy, more over the top and insane, and maybe this story would work, and you wouldn't be thinking about, wait, this is a cartel mob boss and they're starting this fund so they can go and find the bodies of the people that they're responsible for killing. And it's like, that's just so dark and so heavy, then juxtaposed against these goofy songs. Just the tone doesn't work for me. It does feel half-baked, and it doesn't feel like it's fleshed out. I don't care about these characters. I feel like I'm not really learning anything through these songs, and I do kind of feel like it was, as a song was starting to develop and going to a place where I feel like, oh, this is like going somewhere, then it would stop and just move on to the next thing. And this is like a 2-hour, 15-minute film. Like an hour in, I'm like, oh my God. I paused it and looked at the time code and it is plodding. Like the way it moves is so just, it's random, it feels like it. And like the focus on these characters and what it's trying to say in totality, it really just feels like a huge swing and a miss. Like I appreciate this, and it's not a hack director. It isn't. This director has made plenty of great films before, especially Love, Sisters, Brothers. But yeah, this was just a huge miss as far as that approach. And I just don't think it comes across that way without like reading more about it. Because like we do have a film going up against this one in this award season that is a heightened reality directed by a French director, set in a country that they're not from, with the substance. But I feel like that world, it sells the absurdism, and it creates this new world, and it's never distracting because of that. And that's more what the kind of tone I'd be looking for something like this to work for me, because otherwise it kind of just feels cheesy and inauthentic. And like, why did you even include these elements you knew were probably going to be controversial, like he says in the interview with CNN, that the film was an opera and therefore not realistic, adding, if there are things that seem shocking in Emilia Pérez, then I am sorry, cinema doesn't provide answers, it only asks questions, but maybe the questions in Emilia Pérez are incorrect. Which to me is kind of like an admittance, like, oops, maybe I went a bit too far in a few places.
I don't know. I like, because a lot of things that people are saying are kind of his like defenses. So they almost seem like people are interpreting them as like post hoc rationalizations. The way he describes his intentions, to me, I felt that on my first watch before like anybody else was talking about it. I'm like, oh, okay, you are going for like a weird different thing that is, campy and not meant to be taken like as like a literal interpretation of Mexico. Like if you watch my original review of it that I posted well before any other controversy, at no point do I say like, oh yeah, what an authentic representation of Mexico or any of the minority groups. Like, I don't praise it for those things at all, because I didn't feel that from the movie. Like, just literally experiencing the movie by myself, no external expectations or reviews or anything telling me how I'm supposed to feel, or any criticisms or anything. That's just what I felt, and it lines up with how the director is explaining his intentions behind the film, really. So it is interesting, just having these completely different experiences on the same piece of media. But it happens with plenty of movies. It's just not that serious with most movies. Jake, you love Megalopolis, right? So like nobody's harassing anybody over that one right now. So
now they will.
No, they still won't.
Well, I think a big part of it is because nobody would give a fuck about this movie if Netflix hadn't put their entire weight behind it in awards season. The reason why it has so many nominations, et cetera, is because they've been pushing this movie like crazy until very recently, for obvious reasons. But this was like their awards movie, their one awards movie for the season. And I think that then it hit the mainstream, and now we have like channels that would never be talking about this movie talking about it like it's the new Megalopolis and
the new Last Jedi.
It doesn't it doesn't help anything. It's just like the discourse is fucking horrible.
Yes.
And obnoxious, and to have any kind of like nuanced discussion about this is kind of impossible at this point because it's become just a meme. So I'm happy that we're talking about it in this way. And actually, Adam, I thought like your comments about Jacques Audiard and what he's talking about it as like an anti-musical, that is interesting. And I really respect that idea. And I love Dancer in the Dark. I think that's a great movie, but I feel like Dancer in the Dark coheres from beginning to end. Like I never feel like I feel like I know it's not really a fair comparison because that's a masterpiece, but I feel like that movie coheres from beginning to end, and the musical sequences never feel unnecessary or jarring. And just from a creative perspective, like the smaller choices that are made in each musical sequence, I found it very uninteresting. Like there's a musical sequence with Selena Gomez, who's she's kind of like rolling around in bed and filming herself with her phone camera.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, okay, I've seen that in like the Mean Girls musical, just like, okay, how do we film this? Maybe they're filming themselves, like these choices were just kind of boring. And I think that's something that also was surprising to me when watching this, was that because of the pacing, because of how each scene moves into the next one, I was getting very bored of going, okay, I get where we're kind of heading with this. Like, let's move it along or see some kind of complications with the story. I didn't like these characters. Like, I didn't understand them. Zoe Saldana's character, I was like, okay, I get it. You want money, you want success. But after that point, like, do you really care about Emilia Pérez? Like this person who basically kidnapped you and attacked you and forced you to do this? Like, even though, she's a trans character and changed, but it's still the same person, it just felt like, I don't understand you. Like, what is your goal in this now? And then at the end of the film, well, are we talking spoilers?
Yeah, we can talk spoilers. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, let's go spoilers.
But I mean, at the end of the film, when she hires a bunch of guys with guns to go after and rescue Emilia Pérez, I'm like, what is this for? Like, are you guys really that close? Like, I just didn't understand the relationship dynamics. And then, yeah, the musical sequences, there are a couple that I think every musical sequence, I just didn't really get what the purpose of it in the end was. Like the famous one that everyone talks about as being the really good one for Zoe Saldana's character
Mal.
is El Mal. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of
I
that
just
one,
didn't
honestly.
really.
That's the Oscar nom one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The two
yeah,
Oscar nom ones were like my least favorite.
Well, yeah, and to me that one felt like, because I had seen clips of it and I was like, okay, this doesn't look too bad. Maybe in context of the movie it works, but in the movie it feels like, all of a sudden, okay, we're talking about all these rich, corrupt, billionaires in Mexico and how they're overlooking, this subject of the cartel deaths. Meanwhile, Emilia Perez, this person responsible for so much of the carnage, it just feels like there's something off with how the movie is viewing the subject, because that whole sequence felt like a preachy, like cringy thing of like, wow, we're calling out all these powerful people and it's contemporary and this is thoughtful and we're speaking to real problems in Mexico. And that's part of why I can't buy the narrative of, oh well, it's a fantasy, it's this stuff, when it feels to me so clearly in the movie it's trying to be very literal and discuss real everyday problems in Mexico. So
I think that it is riding the line. I think for me, I can say that it can be both sort of thing. And it's just like whether or not you're focusing on one, or whether or not you feel one particular way more can influence your experience.
Sure.
Yeah, it feels like it's being more used in a provocative way than like a genuine.
Exactly.
I want to tell this authentic story based in these cultures I'm not fully involved in or attached to, which I think is part of why it reads the way it does, though. Because I think Jake is right that, to me, this is just not an awards film, and that's part of where this drama comes from. Like, it's got a historic amount of Oscar noms coming up. And then when you look at the 2014 survey said the average Academy voter is 63 years old, 94% white, and 75% men. Are these really the people that are breaking down and seeing the subversive nature of this film, and that's why it's being lauded to such a degree? I don't know. I think it is frustrating when there are films like TV Glow, which I felt I didn't love completely, but the way it communicated the trans experience was quite impressive, and especially that third act was really emotionally effective, I felt. And there's no real talk about that movie, and all of this drama being attached to this trans character feels unfortunate, and the way it's gone down.
It's funny.
It's a historic event. I don't know. It's like a historic event, right? It's like the first trans woman up for a big award, and it's a shame that it has to be attached to this drama, when I feel like if something like TV Glow was up there, there just wouldn't be the same controversy,
I feel like if TV Glow was up there, it would be controversy, but it would be mostly from the right wing, I guess.
Yeah, in which case, who cares?
There would definitely be controversy for TV Glow appearing at the Oscars.
Yeah, but there's controversy, and then there's the tweets and the interview, and Netflix not funding her trips around for certain award shows, and just everything, all that baggage that is now attached to this film.
Yeah, I cannot speak to what the Academy voters got out of the film or their motivations for giving it 13 noms. But I mean, in terms of, I don't know, generally, this is not an unusual thing. Generally, there's movies every year at the Oscars where, if it's nominated for a big award and they decide, oh, we're going to give it a Best Picture, they're going to just toss on a bunch of other noms, whether it deserves them or not, right? There's plenty of examples of this. There's examples of other movies within this same year that are just kind of being handed noms because it's nominated in the larger categories. I'll agree. If we were to call one aspect of the film kind of half baked, I would say the script, right? The characters I'm not in love with. I'm not super relating to them, but in terms of individual scenes and the intent of the emotion behind individual scenes, even though I don't love Emilia Pérez as a character, even though, I'm not in love with her story or invested in her narrative and whether or not she gets her kids back, still watching the scene where she's in bed with her child, and the child is doing this, more whisper singing about how they miss their father. I do feel something from that scene within the bubble of that scene. I feel almost it's almost like I could experience it as a collection of short films. I think that what helps that for me is that the music, in terms of the way that it's written, like the chord progression, the melody, and also the like fullness of the sound in many of these songs. Like, it's not quite like an orchestra, but they use a lot of like different varied instruments and tones and sounds. Like even in the opening number, it'll go straight from like this, kind of large choreography with people like swinging around chairs in the background, and then like in the single shot, move into just a sitting down position, and then you get like the soft piano, and then it's like, oh wow, this song like really transformed. And I'm into those moments because I like the music and I like the way that the music is composed. That being said, there are moments in the film. Some singers are not great. The doctor at the beginning of the lady, like his voice is not great. But as a person that like, I don't know, all of my favorite bands and artists are like people with very distinct and imperfect voices. And like I can go back to early fucking Conor Oberst shit that he wrote when he was 15, and it sounds like shit. But as a person that has like, a lot of experience with music and composition, and I live and breathe music every point in my life. That doesn't mean I'm correct, by the way. I'm just saying my experience. I'm able to view like songs or listen to songs that Conor Oberst wrote when he was 15 that are recorded terribly. The lyrics are just fucking juvenile, but I'm still able to get something out of them. Just kind of feeling the intended emotion, and in my brain going like, okay, yeah, I would change that part. I would change that part, but I still, I get the completed picture of it, even if it's, let's say, in presentation, like a jigsaw puzzle with 75% of the pieces there. My brain's able to fill in the rest and go like, okay, these are these imperfections here. This is what doesn't work about it, but I still get what you're going for. And even with those imperfections, I still see your vision. I still see the intent. And that's how I felt about, a good chunk of the songs in this film, is that, the dude sucks at singing at the beginning of that song, Lady, but, Zoe Saldana's character comes in with her vocal performance and the musicality of that, the chord progression and melody. I think that it's a catchy song. It's something that kind of gets stuck in my head. I ignore, when I'm looping in my head, I ignore the first part with the doctor singing. And I'm stuck with the ideal parts of the song in my head. But yeah, there's so much that I love in terms of like what they went for and what they tried to do, even if in execution, not all of it came together. It is an very imperfect film with a lot of flaws, very rough around the edges. But there's plenty of films that I love like that. There's plenty of directors and auteurs and provocateurs, even. Many have called Jacques Audiard that. I love going through old Lars von Trier films. I love going through like Harmony Korine films that like, you could just as easily call them bad or good. Like what the hell was Aggro Drift? I don't know, right? And like, even if you look at the intent behind it, does it work? Even if you were to say it's supposed to be bad, does it work? No, maybe. To many people, it really depends on what your experience with the film was. And so, yeah, like in that sense, there's a lot of my experience with this film kind of just appreciating what it's going for in any given scene, not necessarily like the full picture of how it was executed.
I am curious, how would you view and justify the penis to vagina scene?
It's
I
hilarious.
am just curious.
It's hilarious.
Okay.
It's funny.
If
It's
every
such a
song was
shit
like
post.
that song, I would like this film. If every song was like that, I'd be into it, honestly. It was like
Yeah.
90 minutes and every song was like that energy and that kind of goofiness, and that it is funny.
Maybe.
It's
It
like
is
so
funny.
over the top,
Yeah.
then it would work. But just
people
that
are
scene,
acting like that's the
that
worst
scene
song.
contrasted against the rest of the movie is just so absurd.
Yeah, I guess it just feels very out of place. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard people say that, and it is a unique song compared to the other songs in the film, in the sense that, like, okay, this one's clearly the most intentionally comedic. It's clearly like taking the piss, throughout the song. All of the backup singers and extras within the entire sequence are giving like a shit-eating grin, staring at the camera, saying vaginoplasty. They got like the doctor with like a very silly voice, and the way he sings, the cadence of it is also just intentionally comedic. So I don't know. I find that track funny. I get what I was supposed to out of it, I believe. There's an absurdist nature to it that it's also catchy. It's also an earworm. I know a lot of people hate it. But
how do you feel about the ending? Because I've kind of found the ending unintentionally funny, and I feel like it was going for like high melodrama, emotional. Like it just seemed so abrupt and bizarre to me.
Yeah,
unsatisfying. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'll bring back what I said earlier, is like things can be both, right? So I look at that scene, I don't take it completely seriously. I'm not like glued to it and being like, oh, she died in a car. I'm going like, oh, that's silly, right? But it's also, even with my experience being like, oh, that's kind of silly in terms of like the sequence of events, I do like the shot of the like how the wide shot of the car kind of gets like digitally blended into this like slow zoom that finalizes in the close shot of the car headlights. And they were using the darkness of the environment to help stitch together those two different shots into one that made for a really cool seamless effect. So yeah, even within a scene where I'm like, that's kind of dumb and funny, at least it's both stimulating from a it's weird that it happened narrative sense, but also stimulating from an there's some cool shots in here sense. And I like the presentation, the technical presentation in many aspects. I haven't yet talked about the sound design in this film, and it's something that I absolutely love. It's very unique and very intentional. And so if any nom is deserved for this film, like, sure, Zoe Saldana's performance, I think she did great, but the sound design nom is one that I think is very well deserved. Now, some people, I think most people, have a very difficult time when it comes to analyzing or interpreting sound. I think a lot of people view it in like a very reductive or very surface level way, including the Academy, by the way, which is why they had to merge sound mixing and sound editing into one category, is because literally they didn't know the difference. And so the same movie wound up winning both every year, and people were just like, I don't know, it sound good. You look at the nominations, it's like, okay, does a complete unknown deserve a sound nom? You can try to psychoanalyze the Academy voters and be like, okay, this one had music in it, probably there's sound in this movie. That's probably why Emilia Pérez has a sound nom based on the Academy voters. But what I love about this film is that, unlike other musicals, and that's what I was going over to check before the podcast started, I was going through some other musicals just to reaffirm my experience and memory of those other musicals. This one is particularly unique in terms of how it creates a 3D soundscape and space, and you can see this and hear this from the opening track in the song. Every single number in this song, if we want to call them that, but particularly when characters are moving across the screen, or even when their head is turning. So a musical like Wicked, basically, most musicals, they'll record a track in a booth, and essentially just lip sync over the track, and through us being conditioned to the experience of a musical, most people don't really see anything wrong with that in terms of like, oh, it's just as if they're lip syncing over a song sort of thing. In this film, regardless of where the audio was recorded, the way that it's edited and the way that it was overall presented has such a keen attention to detail in terms of how the sound moves within an environment. So if you were to watch a scene like the opening scene, or the one with Selena Gomez, and like the most obvious examples are like, okay, she's singing into the pillow, or like when it's through the iPhone, you can hear that the audio sounds like crackly or whatever. Those are the most obvious examples. But what I love are the subtle examples, in terms of like if you're wearing headphones or watching it with surround sound, or in a good theater or with a good sound setup. The way that characters move throughout the environment, if you close your eyes, you can still hear that they're moving through the environment as they're singing. And so also, like certain backup vocalists will get louder when they're in the frame and quieter when they exit the frame. When a character's head is turning, that is something that is reflected in the sound design of the film. So it's not just a visual, like, oh, the character's head is turning. You can hear the way that they sound when they sing that their head is turning, and which direction their head is turning. So I compare this to Wicked. I literally just opened up the film right before we started. So in Wicked, they have basically they'll add sound effects of a character's head turning. So you'll hear the like whoosh or whatever, like if they're making like a really exaggerative movement, but you don't hear it in their voice. You can maybe hear it a bit in their performance, like maybe they'll make almost kind of like a grunting sound, but you don't hear it in the soundscape. You don't hear it in the 3D space. And that's something that this film did super, super well. I would suggest anybody who's trying to like, if this sounds like new information to anybody listening to this, listen to there's like the scene where Zoe Saldana kind of like runs into the door, and there's like I think some cleaning ladies that are in the other room. Like listen to how it sounds as she's entering that room, and how the audio changes based on the shape of the room. Like the way that the audio is heard is also dependent on like the room size they're in. Like that's something that they took into consideration, which I find really cool. Another great example is like within the scene with what's the most famous person's name again? Whose name I already said? Screaming into a pillow.
Saldana. Oh, Gomez.
Selena Gomez.
Yeah. During that scene, not only can you hear it like with her like head turning and which way she's facing in the room, but as it goes into it kind of transitions into like this dance area, right? And she comes in from the left frame, the left side of the frame, and the audio space, you can hear her voice not only coming through on the left side of the frame, but in the way that they edited it, you can tell that she's facing away just from hearing it. And then as she's doing the dance moves, her head is like, turning and spinning. That is all reflected within the sound design. I find that super cool. It's something that like nobody fucking does. And we've seen examples of like some films that have tried to do those things. Like a great example is Fantastic Mr. Fox by Wes Anderson. They had the voice actors literally like running around like in a field for scenes where the characters are running around in a field. They had George Clooney like crouching over, and like it's as if you're getting the real life like boom mic recording with animation. I find that super cool. I don't know exactly what they did to achieve the soundscape of this film. Like I haven't looked extensively at the behind the scenes, but it is like a very detailed effort that you can hear, and I absolutely love it. That's something that I think is super deserved, is the sound numb. And not many people have the ear for that. I know, like it's something that like it just feels like nobody has the perception for. But hopefully now that I've mentioned that, if anybody wants to revisit any of these scenes, they can go like, oh, okay, wow, that is like an interesting technical consideration that I didn't consider. Because if I say the sound's good, people are going to say like, oh, what, you like penis to vagina, which is like a very, like it's a very surface level concept of what sound is and how editing works, and like the different people's jobs in terms of creating sound in a film, and the technical aspects to it, just how much effort goes into it. So yeah.
See, the the sound on that kind of level never stood out to me because what it was in service of for the most part, and I was actually more distracted by some of the sound, particularly through Emilia Perez's singing herself. Actually, there was some kind of auto tuning going on, or I found an article about like the AI cloning used in order for her to reach registers that she couldn't reach. And that really stood out to me. So I wasn't caring about the characters. I wasn't caring about the music. I wasn't caring about the soundscape because I just wasn't caring about the framing of this and the way it was being shown to me. So how do you feel about that AI usage? I feel like it's almost the complete inverse of our conversation around The Brutalist, where I feel like that was so necessary for that film and doesn't really take anything away. Whereas this, it just makes me scratch my head and think like, well, so you don't really care about the trans experience. You have to like use AI to even make this anti-musical come together. So like what are we doing here? Like, this is just such a strange film for me from that perspective.
I don't know if it really is that different from the Brutalist conversation, because when we're talking about the AI usage for audio here, we might as well just be saying auto-tune, which is something that every single musical uses. You can hear it very egregiously in Wicked when Jeff Goldblum is singing, by the way. You know,
but it sounds equally bad like in that film and this to me.
Yeah,
I guess is my point.
Exactly. Yeah, like it's imperfect. It is not. I'm not going to say like all of the singing sounds great. I think that there's a lot of criticism to be made with the singing and vocal performances, but a lot of it does work for me. A lot of it does work, and again, as someone that, you know, I can watch this movie and you know, stitch together the 70% of whatever of the end product and be like, okay, here's what it was trying to go for, and I still like it. Yeah, it's the AI usage in terms of the vocal performance for that character. It's just, oh, they wrote a song, they wanted the register to be higher than she was able to perform. It's not, you know, in terms of audio editing music, it's not like an egregious or even unusual thing, right? It's just a new word that people are scared of.
It's not unusual, but it definitely stood out to me as
sure,
like a distracting thing in those scenes where like I don't like this. I don't understand why they're doing this.
I wouldn't say that that's like present throughout, though. You know, I would say that that's noticeable at moments. In moments,
not every song is with certain like notes, certain vocal registers, as we said, but there were some moments that really stood out for me with that in particular.
I mean, I think I'm with you on it, Alex. Like I like you describing it out, Adam, is like really interesting. I didn't even know they did that. Like that's, you know, a level of detail I wasn't even aware of and probably would never look into.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, just wear headphones and skim through some scenes. It's really interesting,
right? But like I can't subject myself to those scenes again, so what's the point? You know? If I can't watch it, you know, it's like you're saying, Alex, like I don't like the story, I can't relate to these characters, and not that I have to relate to these characters, but just nothing fundamentally works on like a script level. So everything below that, I just like that. All right, like that's cool that they did that, but yeah, what is it in service of? I can't really say.
I'm glad you said that, because I say that to many films. There's so many films where it's like there's something, you know, like I'll not vibe with it, and then people go like, oh, but what about this technical element or this thematic element? It's like, yeah, but if I'm not vibing with it, you know, what is there for me to get out of it? Like, I'm not going to want to re-explore it for that. If it's a movie that, you know, gets better on the second watch in terms of like what it's saying thematically or you know, some of the technical elements, like, yeah, I completely agree with you. If you're not feeling it, there's no reason to want to check that out. And, you know, in terms of appreciating something, it can just end at like, oh, that's a nice thing that they did, but, you know, the overall experience of the movie doesn't work. So
yeah, that's I mean, that's it. I mean, I don't know. It's so subjective.
No,
these little, yeah.
There's one correct opinion to have on this movie. Your credibility is destroyed.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that maybe we're all wrong in different ways. I mean, Adam, I think you're most wrong, but that's my opinion. Yeah, I don't know. It's really weird and unfortunate that this movie has become the lightning rod that it has. I don't think it's the worst movie ever made, but it is definitely unpleasant for my eyes and ears.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Shout out to Selena Gomez's line, "My pussy hurts thinking of you." That was my
Nice. And I guess I'll just address this. So apparently, there's some people are saying that the singing in Wicked was recorded live, like all of the singing
Yeah, I've
was
seen people
recorded
say that.
live. I don't know how true that is. I would have to look into it. But either way, in terms of like how it shows in the film, there's something very extra with how they presented the sound design in Emilia Pérez, especially with the singing and the space of the sound that doesn't reflect much in Wicked. So it's kind of interesting, like if that was all recorded, literally every single line is like Dogma 95. I don't know if I believe that. It might just
the
be
only
a
the
marketing
only
thing.
reason the only reason I would think Wicked did record all their audio in person was because of Michelle Yeoh's performance. Because why would they do that to her? I don't know.
Well, here's the thing: is like it might just. I'll look into it more, but it might be one of those things where it's like, oh, they actually sang it live, but it's not necessarily like, oh, they used the exact take of, or there might have been some sweetening. There might have been some like other recordings, like, who knows? Like you can still be singing on set and that not necessarily be the audio that is in the final film. Like, if you just look at the scene where Jeff Goldblum is singing, there's like a close shot that cuts to a wide shot, and you can it's such a messy edit with how they basically the intent of the edit is like, okay, he's close to the camera, and then we're gonna have him lower in the mix because he's further away from the camera, but you can like literally hear the like messy crossfade as that's happening. It's like a really jarring, just unprofessional sounding edit. So yeah, I'll have to look into exactly what the marketing claims are from Wicked, but yeah, in terms of, I don't know, the experience and how it's presented, I feel like Emilia Pérez did really, really interesting and unique things with the sound design that I really like.
Well, Emilia Pérez has been vanquished from awards season. It is now Wicked Sweep. We are ready for Wicked Sweep. Every single category. Get ready, guys.
I still think Saldana's probably going to win.
I mean, she's the favorite.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. I would not be surprised by that.
Yeah, who else would it be? I don't even know who else.
Exactly.
Is in
Nobody else is in the conversation at the moment.
Felicity Jones.
Yeah.
Felicity Jones.
Did you ever watch Hard Truths?
Yeah.
Yeah. No nom for Marion Jean Baptiste or whatever.
Oh, that's the Mike Lee movie. No, I wanted to see that. I love Mike Lee. Yeah.
Okay, cool. No matter how long we talk about this film, there's going to be people mad and saying that I represented something inaccurately. I don't know. Our comments saying the discourse is toxic. People will go, no. There's people talking about it rationally. It's like, okay, well, you don't understand how they're being drowned out, and you're being dishonest, and you're gaslighting. Stop gaslighting.
Yeah. I just want to reiterate, I know we had a great conversation about this, but I want to communicate directly to our audience and say that Adam was talking over me the whole time and disrespecting me, and he did not let me get any single point across. The end.
Yeah. You're both scared to disagree with me, is one that people say a lot. If people are scared to disagree with me, I won't let people disagree with me because I have strong opinions.
The group chat is a nightmare. I had no idea coming into this podcast, but it's like,
it's vicious.
Oh my God.
Here's one more tiny thing about my relationship with music that I think is kind of relevant. If you look at, so there's I've got like a playlist called Bangers on Spotify that some people have discovered, and you should play it on shuffle. There's like a lot of songs that I'm just like kind of into in the moment. Sometimes I'll remove things, sometimes I'll add things. There's a huge variety of like different tones and genres, but some of the artists on there are speaking foreign languages that I don't understand. So Stupeflip is a French rap group. Maximum the Hormone, Japanese band. One of the tracks from the soundtrack to Hausu is a Japanese band that I don't know what they're singing, but I listen to the music. And I'm still able to jam with it. I'm still able to vibe with it. I'm still able to like sing along with it without it without it even needing to have like a literal interpretation of like what are they going for. You know, music is something that you can feel. And in that sense, like, sure, are there issues with the script? Yes. Sure. Are there issues with what the song is communicating, or like, does it make sense logically, or is there a reason for this character to be saying this, and how does this represent this? All those issues exist, but I can enjoy music independently of that. I can enjoy things with like weird, messy lyrics that don't make any sense. I can enjoy things with lyrics that I don't understand because I don't speak the language, and that's just my relationship with music. So, yeah,
and it's wrong.
It's a wrong thing to experience. Yeah,
incorrect.
Yeah, it's funny. I just think it's crazy that people take some things so seriously. Like we can have interesting conversations and hash things out in a way where, I don't know, my goal when I have conversations with other people that have a different perspective than me is not to win an argument. It's to understand the other person, right? I think that people forget that that's something that some people are interested in, or that you can be interested in, you know? Like,
they want to see us beat you down so you change your opinion and apologize for liking something that the mob doesn't like. And that's part of it. It's like so much of the conversation around it is like, how many of you have actually seen this film? Because like, if you've seen it, then I respect your opinion, but like, how much of this is just like culture war / just fiery online? It's the new thing right now. It's not going to stop until the Oscars happen. Like, it just feels like the current thing to be mad about.
That's what I don't get about movie discourse in general. Like, I don't know why it is about movies that, maybe because it's so accessible for people that
because everybody watches
opinion,
movies.
But everyone watches movies. But it's like, people get so angry when you disagree with them on movies, or you have a bad movie take, or they have this idea about who you are because of it. I think it has something to do with how powerless people feel in general in the world, and we don't have much say over our political institutions. So, hey, you know what we can do is yell at people for having the wrong movie takes. You know, just one of those things.
And sometimes people can't separate like an emotional experience, or they take it as a personal attack. If they had a strong emotional positive experience with something, then they hear a bad review, or vice versa. And just disconnecting those two things can be tough for some.
Yeah, if you dislike the Mario movie, you're attacking someone's identity because they've built their identity around the brand. They're the Mario movie, so you're attacking them.
I'm Mario.
I am the Mario movie. So yeah, ratings. Alex, what, you give it a 4 out of 10?
Yeah, I'll just finish by saying, I had a completely flat emotional experience. There are a couple of things I actually did like. I did like the Penis to Vagina Yes 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 song. I thought that was hilarious. The like mumble song was also kind of interesting to me, and I wish there was kind of more on that level, or the songs would develop more. There was some like frenetic kind of fun camera work and some great shots here and there, some good lighting. But yeah, just as a whole, especially that whole ending, the conclusion, I don't really understand what it's saying. The titular character has like this silly conclusion that doesn't even matter, and I'm just left thinking like, why do we even focus on this? Why do we include these elements if we didn't really care about it outside of just the lightning rod that it is? Also, one more thing, I want to shout out the parody short film that's been going around, made by trans Mexican. Yeah, it's really funny. They're all like doing the inverse like caricatures with they're all dressed up in like sailor shirts with mustaches and baguettes and doing their own kind of clap back, which I thought was really funny. That's on YouTube. But yeah, 4 star out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I'm going 2 stars. 2 stars
out of 10.
Yeah,
harsh.
Yeah, well, sometimes you gotta. Sometimes you just gotta go out there and say no. And I'm not trying to. Yeah. I mean, people were so mean to my beloved Megalopolis, so no holds barred here. I did not like this movie. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I watched it twice. Yeah, I'm comfy with a 7, and perhaps on a third watch I'll change it to a 6. I don't know. Who knows?
So you did rewatch it for this discussion in your Oscar video, I assume.
Yeah. And I got more or less the same experience as when I watched it in a theater, with some things kind of like reaffirmed, I guess. Like, there's a section in the 70% through the movie that I found like slow and uninteresting, and it's like 10 or 15 minutes long, that I'm like, okay, I could do without this. I don't care about this. And that, second watch reaffirmed that I felt that way, and that I wasn't just tired after seeing like 5 movies in a day at a festival. So we'll see how I feel on a third watch. I'll probably watch it a third time at some point. Like there's things that I like about this movie. There's things that I get from the experience, and damn, as a guy that every one of my controversies seems to be that I don't like a movie. now I'm like, I'm getting like a positive experience out of something and people hating me for it. I can't fucking win. Whatever. You should be happy that I got something out of it that you didn't. Right?
I support you. I support you, Adam. We
Thank
stand
you.
behind you. Yes, your 7 out of 10 will be respected.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay to like something that's imperfect. It's okay to like something that's flawed. It's okay to like something that's offensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. It's okay that you support Carla Sofia Gascon and all of her opinions on Twitter.
Especially
That's
her tweets.
Totally fine.
I would have given it a 5, but her tweets raised it up to a 7. So,
right, that explains it.
Mm-hmm.
Good to know.
Yeah, full support. All right, it's a time for a recommendation from Jake.
Yeah.
Take it away.
All right, today we are discussing David Lynch's 1997 film, Lost Highway. I chose this because you guys haven't seen it, and it's been a while since I've seen it. This is probably my 3rd or 4th time watching it. I have an interesting relationship to this film.
Mm-hmm.
And it's certainly, even in his filmography, it stands apart a little bit. I think it was critically reviled for the most part when it came out. I know famously it had that like advertising poster that was 2 thumbs down from Siskel and Ebert. I am really curious to... Wait, let me guess first. I want to guess your guys' ratings. I think Adam... This is stupid. I shouldn't even be doing this. All right. Adam, your rating is going to be 5 out of 10. Alex, you're going to give it a 7.
Interesting.
We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see.
All right. I'm just excited to hear, because I myself have had like a changing relationship to this film.
Did you hate it and then love it?
I was very confused when I first saw it in high school. This was way before. I think it kind of has, its reputation has gotten a lot better. But at the time I was like, okay, I don't know. That's definitely not Blue Velvet. It's very dark and confusing and kind of a horror film. And then over the years, I've seen it in different light. And I feel like this viewing experience definitely opened it up a lot more to me, just because of life experience. I haven't killed anybody, but I feel like I relate differently to what's going on screen, especially as it relates to the noir genre. I've read a lot of noir fiction, and I love, classic noir films. So go ahead, guys. What did you think?
Take it away, Alex.
This was crazy. Yeah, because it takes me back to early on in the podcast where Wild at Heart was recommended, and I just didn't connect with that movie. It really hasn't stuck with me. Didn't like the vibe it was going for. All I really remember is that shot. That's that really good cut of on the bed with the feet close up. That was cool. But over the years, I've kind of indulged more in Lynch, and I love him as a person. I think he's such a character. I love watching interviews with him, and of course, it's all it's in my algorithm at the moment with the sad news of him passing semi recently as recording this. I just love his approach to creativity and how unfettered, and especially what I've grown to appreciate about him is how he's able to capture a dreamlike, surreal atmosphere. A lot of the best directors are able to do this, be it like a Gilliam, Bergman, Jodorowsky, or whoever. But there's something about the way he presents his dreamlike narratives that are so like confidently weird and don't fall into that trap a lot of films that are experimental or trying to go against the grain for me that just I can't emotionally connect with or don't feel anything. I feel like, especially with this one, Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive as well, the way it's able to balance this fear against this comedy with the violence and how unpredictable that is, and just completely against all these like rules you've come to expect from more like formulaic cinema, and just like keep it entertaining for a film as long as this. Man, I thought this was great, actually, and quite a companion piece to Mulholland Drive. I felt like he was working out that style of filmmaking and where he wanted to take it, and just this non-linear kind of narrative and these dual perspectives, and just like a lot of the plot making no sense, but it's still kind of emotionally working and feeling relatable from this kind of, everyone understands dreams, and there is something absurdist and understandable about it, even though when it comes down to, so what's the plot of Lost Highway, it's a bit like yeah,
you know,
start, yeah, like start, there's a guy, there's like a
you ever have a headache?
Like, yeah
no.
Yeah, so I really liked the experience of this one.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
I thought it was pronounced Mulholland Doctor. I'm just kidding.
Oh shit.
What the fuck?
I think Mulholland Drive is my favorite Lynch film. And I haven't seen it in so long, but I currently have it as a 7. I feel like if I revisited it, in current version of me, it might like bump up to an 8. So I would like to see that again. Also, Blue Velvet, I will be seeing on Friday because that won the Patreon watch along poll for my YMS Patreon, obviously because Lynch passed away. So I'm doing some Lynch stuff this month. In terms of Lost Highway, I had very mixed feelings throughout different parts of the film because it goes in a lot of different places. I found myself not really into the opening section. So I felt like I was getting much more out of it as soon as Pole Man disappeared for a while. And it started doing its I would like, I don't know. There's something, so when David Lynch as a director, he's very strong on tone and vibe. And there's a lot of people that connect with that particular tone and vibe. And sure, this one does stand out in a weird way in his filmography for sure. But I'm just like, I found myself more observing that first section than I was like experiencing it. I was reminded of other movies that I like more. Movies that came after, even. I'm not even saying that ripped them off, like Caché. I'm like, damn, I wish I would.
I was just going to say Caché.
Yeah.
Wish I was watching Caché.
It's one of the first things I noted down.
And yeah, like, it's interesting in the sense that, like, okay, everybody's like talking to each other really awkwardly and speaking quietly sometimes. Glad I have subtitles. the sound design in Lynch films is always very intentful and very much his vibe and on brand, but also like undeniably cheesy for me. A lot of the sound effects and how they're used is like there's like an overwhelmingly cheesy sound. That being said, I did connect with this film. And it is something that I would watch again. Despite it being an experience where I don't know, like I found myself enjoying it in more of like kind of a popcorny way, than a like serious like, ooh, what's the mystery? What's going to happen? Investment kind of way. There were quite a few scenes in this film that were like laugh out loud funny to me. Just very absurd moments and silly scenarios that
I agree.
Yeah.
But I like it for that. Yeah. I was kind of actually with you with your experience for the very first section of the movie up until the mystery man shows up with that phone scene, which I love that scene. That was like, as soon as it kind of plays its hand with like how surreal it's going to get. And I guess if you didn't get that emotional experience of the fear, and Mulholland Drive does similar things where it'll just be the scariest scene you've ever experienced, just randomly in a way you couldn't predict. And yeah, I really felt like the tingle down my spine, and it was working for me from that angle. And yeah, it does shift kind of in the second half to almost a completely different vibe entirely, and then comes back round on itself in a quite a satisfying, unique way. But I'd never found myself kind of at an arm's length with it, even though I was seeing how some of these performances are kind of stiff and cold. But it just feels like a dream to me, and I really value it for that. Like it feels like being in a dream, and just a filmmaker able to convert like that something that you can't even verbalize into an experience you can watch and then like feel the emotions of. I really love that about his best films.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you guys like connected with it on some level. I think that I'm surprised, Adam, that you liked the comedy, because there are funny parts in this for sure, but it also feels like it has the least amount of like corny, goofy comedy that you'll see in his other movies. This movie to me is like a pure nightmare. Like it is. Every time I watch it, I feel this sense of dread and kind of panic. And I think the movie is really trying to instill that. And I feel like it is a very serious movie about like sexual violence and jealousy. Like that's my takeaway from what it is. And it's bent through the lens of noir cliche and fantasy. And that's something that he's dealt with in a lot of his films, but never so seriously, and never with such like fear and terror. I mean, it is a noir film cranked up to pure horror in some parts. And I think I agree with you, Alex, that like when it became the Balthazar Getty scenes, once Bill Pullman transforms, it's a way less punishing movie. But that opening, that first 45 minutes are really unpleasant. And yeah, the relationship, trying to intuit what's going on, the videotapes, but it is just such a like suffocating environment being in that house with those two people. That sex scene between them is just like really unpleasant, and watching the jealousy kind of build and build it's very it's some of the darkest like stuff that he's done. I have not seen Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. I know that has a reputation for darkness, but I think a big part of what Lynch was exploring in this film, or what he said he's explored, is how does someone commit a murder, and then how does their brain process that and try to move on with their lives. And I guess he was obsessed with the O.J. Simpson trial around this time, and that plays into this movie perfectly, and you can see kind of what themes he's exploring. That the whole movie is about this transformation, how the brain tries to comprehend what it's done or what it's capable of, and kind of goes into fantasy mode. And that whole Balthazar Getty, Patricia Arquette, Mr. Eddie, Robert Loggia is great in this movie. That's a whole different movie. That's like has some comedy. He's like beating up a guy for tailgating him. He's falling in love with the mob boss's girlfriend. Like that's Pulp Fiction. It's playing with these things, but in such a way that is really exploring like what does it mean to have a femme fatale, in a film? Like what is that like deeply fucked up and disturbing relationship to femininity in this genre? And how are the men in this movie abusing this character who is two characters, is both femme fatale and victim? It's a deeply like layered movie. Like I just have so much respect for what it is attempting to do and what it achieves. But it's a hard movie for me to watch because it is so successful at just like putting up all of the twisted, like sick fantasies of David Lynch and also of the genre itself,
Yeah, I love how it included the kind of voyeuristic angle as well with the porno stuff and the cameras and being delivered these videotapes. Speaking of cachet, obviously I was thinking about that too. But the way that the murder is kind of revealed to the audience, I thought was a very unsettling, truly deeply scary scene with the way that was unraveled, and then just skipping over anything but legal, like any court system, whatever. He's just straight behind those bars. And yeah, as you're saying about this, kind of like this unreliable protagonist type figure who's constantly like victimizing himself, which, you bring up the OJ thing. It feels like an apt kind of way to characterize someone who's done something so evil. And yeah, what their psyche might look like from the inside out, and how dark and warped and there's no logic to follow once you've done something like that. And yeah, you probably would have to reinvent yourself in some way, and the way that's communicated through the visuals, through these needle drops and these random characters coming in and out. It's really quite brilliant as far as capturing that, the emotion of how that would feel, describing something, that I already said you can't really put to words, but I feel like it captures that feeling so well through this. And it isn't just completely aimless, though. I feel like there is stuff you can pick up through these kind of like abstract themes and recurring symbolism that a lot of his films seem to do, despite that disregard for a like formulaic structure. He really feels like a painter or something to me with the way he puts this stuff together. And the main character starts off, he's like a saxophone player, right? And it almost felt like an improv jazz type structure to the way the film was like building itself up and moving. Really creative.
Yeah, I think what I'm coming to terms with is like I enjoy David Lynch's films, but they don't speak to me on like a really deep and personal level. And I think part of the reason why Mulholland Drive is, from my memory, my favorite, or at least the one that like I feel has resonated with me the most and that I remember the most about and want to return to, is I feel like that's the one where, I don't know, perhaps through its presentation or the performances or maybe the characters, I'm able to take that one more seriously in like a literal narrative sense, and kind of get absorbed into that movie in a way that I'm not really as able to with most of Lynch's other works. Like, even with this film, like, yes, there are intentional comedic elements to it. The tailgating scene has definitely some intentional comedic elements, but even in the opening to this, like, I don't know if it's just like the vibe of it feeling cheesy to me or just like weird and off. Perhaps I'm just not in love with like the characters or performances, but like I'm kind of watching even like the opening scene, the intro scene, like even with the murder, I'm finding it kind of like silly, you know. The
Really?
choices for like almost kind of like jump scary sound effects and like the flashes in the editing, and it's an interesting choice for it to go from the black and white video recording into the color, like full frame, like, oh, this is actually happening and he's there. But at the same time, just like the whole uh the whole vibe through the editing, and then like, I don't know, I found it really funny that the sort of like zoned out baby like expression that he has on his face while he's there murdering, like, I found that hilarious. Like, I found that genuinely funny. um and so yeah, I it is interesting hearing people being able to take Lynch films a lot more seriously in general than I'm able to, and in that sense I'm still appreciating them, just not in like a glued into the universe kind of way, more just like, oh, I'm watching a film and I'm watching a film made by a weirdo and that's fun kind of way.
Right. Yeah. No, I don't find the same thing funny as far as what you're describing. I mean more like the idiosyncrasies of these random like side characters that show up and just say like just these crazy lines. Smooth as shit from a duck's ass. There's some spooky
Yeah.
shit we got here. Like that kind of thing is what I love, and that's like a bit of the levity. And I keep saying it's dreamlike, but God, it really does feel like it. The way these random kind of things are mismatched against each other. And you mentioned the editing, but I love the editing here, like these repeating shots and like reincorporating these ideas throughout that don't make sense at the beginning, but do towards the end, and like the timing with the music and it all like diegetically flowing together. Like, soundtrack is amazing in this film. I love the use of Bowie, Lou Reed, got Nine Inch Nails in there, and they all complement the scenes they're used in to either enhance it, to make it weird and off-putting. And I think the atmosphere is such a priority, I feel like, in his movies, and that might be why it doesn't connect with you as much, Adam. Like if you're not buying into that atmosphere and not finding it creepy, it's just not going to work for you. But I find it very effective. Yeah. Whereas I'd not put off by the iciness of some of the performances. I did at first, but I kind of settle into it, and especially after what happens and the kind of scares it puts you through in that first section, even though I was almost disappointed that it stopped being as scary after that first kind of 40 minutes, I was still intrigued by what was going on and like where this was going or what was it saying. And then this femme fatale character appearing again, but it seems to be someone else, and they look different. Their hair is changed different. What does that mean now that they've changed their hair? Like, what are the implications of that? And it really gets you thinking, in the same way that having a bizarre, horrible dream of all these ideas smashed together after you wake up and try and pick it apart. I feel like the same experience and feeling of like, oh, I need to like pick this apart, and what did that thing mean, and what does the reverse imagery of the burning shack mean, and like all this kind of stuff. I feel like it's just gets my head spinning, and it's just so creative.
Yeah, what's interesting is so in terms of like tone and imagery that I've connected with from David Lynch the most, from my memory, it's been from like his short films. There was like a really interesting oneer that he directed. I think it was like he was hired to like make a commercial or something, and then it like went through like a building, and then part of it went on fire. I'm like, oh wow, like what an interesting, memorable image. There's a film from 2007 called To Each His Own Cinema, where they got a bunch of artistic auteur directors to participate and basically just make like a collection of short films presented in one movie. And some of them are good, some of them are bad. But my favorite from that entire collection was the one that Lynch directed. And I found that without fully describing it, it was like, that was like a very visceral, nightmare-y, like weird, like I was super into what he showed there in a way that like I still remember it. I still feel it. I can remember the sound design choices. I can remember the visual choices, and it's very short. But I feel like personally his style, in terms of like what I am able to get out of his films, it just lends itself better to personally, short snippets or shots or concepts, rather than like an overarching story, or like a tone and vibe or an atmosphere of like an entire piece. I guess with the exception of Mulholland Drive, that I remember that working well overall for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's I mean, I personally prefer Mulholland Drive as well. I think most people do, and I think a lot of the reason why it's interesting because Mulholland Drive started as like a TV show and then was kind of pieced together of different parts, whereas this was completely conceived as a film. And I think this one maybe coheres a little better, but Mulholland Drive has a kind of, even with all the darkness, and it's a disturbing film, you have the Llorando, or whatever, the scene where, in the theater, there's a kind of like beautiful quality and a transcendent theme of, you kind of have that sweet and that bitterness in a lot of Lynch's movies. And for me, this movie completely gets rid of that sweetness. I find that there's nothing really sweet about this movie. And I think that the Patricia Arquette character, Alice Renee, is very similar, I think, to Naomi Watts' character in Mulholland Drive, in that she's someone who's been abused in this industry and is kind of discarded, and but unlike Mulholland Drive, we aren't given access to her. We aren't told to empathize with her. She is kind of like an otherworldly creature throughout the whole film, and I think that's what is so upsetting through a lot of it. There's a scene where, and I do think that's the point. I don't think the movie is I think the movie's commenting on that for sure. But there's that scene where she explains to Balthazar Getty's character how, she knows Mr. Eddie, etc., and we see her being forced to strip at gunpoint in front of him. And after that, Balthazar Getty's character simply asks, "Why didn't you just leave?" And I was just like, oh, how did I not catch that before? Like, that's such a
victim blaming,
fucked up line, like she's literally has a gun pointed to her head, but her character is just like, "Can you forgive me?" Or "Do you still want to be with me?" and that sort of thing. She is like a cipher the entire film. And I think she's the key to the film because, another thing that happens, near the end when he finally transforms back into Bill Pullman, it's when they're having sex in front of the car in the desert, and she whispers in his ear, "You can never have me." And that's when he transforms back. That's I feel like that unlocked so much of the movie to me thematically. Like, this person cannot be his possession. I mean, that's ultimately probably what, why the murder happened. It's about this sexual jealousy and, what brings him back or maybe transforms him into another person, because I'm kind of unconvinced that Bill Pullman in the final 10 minutes of this movie is a different character from the Bill Pullman in the first half of the movie. I think that just says so much about what this movie is trying to communicate about the male psyche and sexual jealousy. It kind of flips back on itself, at the end of the film when he goes up to his own house and says Dick Laurent is dead.
Yeah,
I don't know what that means. I don't know. And then he's chased by the cops, and he kind of has a tantrum in the car, and there's a lot of flashing lights. But I think that, like, emotionally, I feel like the movie is trying to communicate the pain of this character, Patricia Arquette's characters, suffering, the abuse that they endure. I mean, I think this is a theme that Lynch goes over through a lot of his films with his female characters, and maybe it's not as done as tactfully or with the same kind of nuance that a female director or writer would tackle it. But I think that through the lens of noir the noir genre. It's a really bold and very incisive like exploration of the femme fatale archetype.
I think you could make an argument for like him leaving the message to himself, or leaving the door buzzer voice message to himself. You could interpret it as either like, okay, Lynch is saying that like there's like a cycle of violence in the male
Yeah.
psyche, or that like even his attempts to like either ignore or pretend to be redempted or just not want to face reality, it doesn't excuse reality and it comes back. Or you could say like that the nature of him doing that is Lynch trying to get at the idea that it is like self-inflicted, like the mentality is his own fault, that he's not like a victim in this scenario, that he set these things in motion for himself.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head with this idea of you said the word possession, and I was actually thinking about the film Possession too, which has kind of similar themes of the relationship between men and women.
Great movie.
And, especially how the male perspective and the focus on that, and kind of going back to the soundtrack, the inclusion of the song to the Siren by Tim Buckley got me thinking with like the mythical implication of what a siren is, and how it was a mythical creature that would pull sailors in and represents this kind of like lust or some kind of exaggerated idea of what a woman is to a man on a like base, weird, like primal level or something. And the way that's kind of communicated through the film and used through this music, and how she is this femme fatale, as you're saying. Yeah, I really feel like that's the kind of point of the movie, and it being locked to the male perspective too. Like, you're right, she doesn't really have much agency, and a lot of the conclusions and conversations are quite sick and one-sided and possessive. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that so much of his psyche maybe is trying to externalize this internal misogyny and violence, because he can't remember the murder. He has to see it through videotape. He explains to the cops, I like to remember things my own way, not necessarily how it happens. And the Robert Blake character, even that phone call scene when he says, I'm in your house right now, you can talk to me. The criminal is within, like, I think it's a pretty simple way to put it. And later on, when his heroic, noir fantasy of being the young guy, going out with the boss's girlfriend, when they finally kill Mr. Eddie, it is supposed to be some kind of catharsis of killing the real villain, the real, the bad man, representing all of the evil in this world. But that doesn't do anything. It just leads to, again, the cycle of violence. Dick Laurent is dead. Well, the whole movie is just going to start all over again, and he's still being pursued by the cops. There's no real resolution. The cycle continues. And there's something that I also noticed new this time through, is that after that party scene where Robert Blake calls him, etc., when he goes home, he tells his wife, to stay in the car, and he goes upstairs and looks around. In that scene, there's I don't know why I never noticed this before, but he's looking around and he turns and looks directly at the camera, and there's like a jump scare cue as he looks directly at the camera, and his expression is like, oh yeah, you guys are here. Like, we're the ones who's in his house filming, we're the ones watching this. There's that voyeuristic feeling of like, yeah, we're also participating as viewers in this crime and in this perpetuation of violence on screen, I guess.
Mm-hmm. There's also the line after he yeets the guy, where he's like, we killed him. She's like, no, you did. So that could be also backing up the idea of, him leaving himself the message, being kind of getting at like, no, this is your responsibility. You are you are doing this to yourself, sort of thing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Very weird movie, as expected. I felt what's kind of funny is that scene with the tailgating part felt, I mean, like, it was funny, but it felt so weirdly out of place for like what I've seen from Lynch filmography. Like, maybe you could correct me if there's other examples of this, but it really felt like, oh, Lynch is doing Tarantino for a scene where he's just like he's speaking through the character, like, here's the, you know what really grinds my gears? It's people tailgating. Brings up all the statistics. Like, if I could, and he's clearly just like living through the guy. Like, I wish I could just pull them out of the vehicle and smack them. Everybody needs a smack if you're tailgating.
Well, yeah, that line early on about the main character, he says something about how he hates video cameras. That's apparently just like David Lynch's opinion on those video cameras, and he just like made it part of the character. So that would feed into what you're saying.
Which is so surprising that a few years later he'd make Inland Empire, on
very video.
Yeah, you can find interviews so he's like loves digital cameras by the end.
Yeah.
Maybe
maybe
he fell in love with phones at some point.
Yeah. This movie, it also is like all about like, I guess, like video and recording, and it's, I guess, ahead of its time in that sense, like now it's even more prevalent. I think that, I guess Caché is dealing with it in a similar way. I think Caché is a better movie, but they're so different and trying to do such different things.
So different, yeah.
But no, like there's something there's nothing like this movie out there. I'm just
that's fair.
Very grateful that it was made, and I think regardless of how you feel about it, I don't think you can argue that David Lynch and Barry Gifford, the co-writer, didn't make what they wanted to make. And
true.
I think that it is very successful at what it did. Fun fact: I met Barry Gifford. This is so random.
Do it.
I met Barry Gifford, who
You kiss him?
I went to art school for like a year, like right after I graduated high school. Anyways, we watched Wild at Heart. Not a fan of Wild at Heart, but I've only seen it once, so it's been a while. But he wrote the material for Wild at Heart, Sailor and Lula stories, and he came in to talk to us a little bit. And I was 18. I asked him probably a stupid question about how do you feel about writing surrealism? But he tore me a new asshole. I swear to God, this guy was like, really? You are my enemy.
Nice.
And it was very funny in hindsight, because he kind of treated me as like the critics. He was like, the critics, like this young man will tell you a movie has to be this way. And it was funny. After the class, everyone was like, damn, what was that about? So
you got mean.
I feel like... Yeah, I was like, that was interesting. I mean, I have no idea what that was about, and I probably did say something very stupid and deserved it, but yeah, that was my fun experience with Barry Gifford. I mean, otherwise seemed like a pleasant man, but their collaborations, Wild at Heart and Lost Highway, I think they're unique in his filmography because of his contributions there. Yeah.
What do you think about the very loud licensed music in the film?
Love it.
Yeah,
I think it enhances every time it's used. Yeah, I think it never distracted me or took me out of a scene. It only ever enhanced a scene for me, or kind of gave you some clues as to what it was going for, or what it was saying. If you were like listening to the lyrics and the kind of, or like the juxtaposition of how it was used, perhaps like the Lou Reed one, like the lyrics quite positive, but like the way it was used made it quite a unnerving atmosphere for me.
Yeah, it was, for me, it was definitely jarring. The Marilyn Manson and Rammstein, whatever. It was like just very, very intentional choices, but just kind of like odd in their placement for me.
Yeah, the oddness is kind of exactly what I like about it, though, I guess. Like,
yeah.
I would describe the film as odd and
exactly
kind of incomprehensible.
It's just whether or not you vibe with
exactly why I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not my favorite, music, and I think like maybe I like Blue Velvet more just because it has the Roy Orbison music and it's a little more riffing on the 50s from the 80s, but this is, it almost feels like we're trying to be more hip and like, oh, we got like this cool soundtrack and we're kind of on the edge of things. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it works for me, but it's not my favorite aspect of the movie. Yeah.
Marilyn Manson literally showed up in the movie. That was weird.
Did he? I didn't even
Yeah,
realize.
yeah.
What
He
scenes
was.
he in? I didn't-
It was. There were when he was. It was almost kind of like when he was. I forget if it was on the projector or on a TV, but there was like a tape of like almost kind of like an orgy. It was like a. There was a close shot. You could see his eyes, where the one pupil is larger than the other pupil. That was his. That was his eyes.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then you could see him laying down. I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
of
that's
course.
actually Marilyn Manson acting in the film. So he wasn't like a major character. He didn't have any lines or anything, but he was just kind of like in there.
All
It's
right.
kind of funny.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's wild.
Also, Richard Pryor is in this.
Yeah. That was funny.
Really random. Or a creepy bit of trivia I read about Robert Blake was that he wound up killing his wife like a few years after this. So that kind of parallel with the mystery man, like in real life, being involved,
Allegedly.
or at least implicated allegedly in some kind of. You can read about it on his Wikipedia or whatever. It's really fucked up and weird.
Oh. Well, Lynch hypnotized him into doing it.
It is a weird element now that like a weird layer to this movie now. And maybe unsurprisingly, Quentin Tarantino was it's like a Robert Blake truther. Like, oh, he didn't kill his wife, you know? I don't know why. That seems like the kind of thing he'd be passionate about. But
I'm a Jeffrey Epstein truther. The guy's innocent.
okay, that's good to know. Okay,
and a
cool.
Harvey Weinstein truther.
We should make a movie about that.
Yeah, I should just make a YouTube video about it. Just main channel. Like, actually, guys, you know, probably nothing happened, maybe. You guys should just like...
We need a... Yeah, and then you go into a psychogenic fugue after saying you like Emilia Pérez, and then you become a different person. And,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was... I would watch this again. I think I'll probably get more out of it on a second watch. It was interesting kind of like reading the interpretations afterwards. Most people seem to generally be on the same page about like what it's going for, and like most people seem to interpret the lightning at the end as like, oh, he's in the electric chair sort of thing. And yeah, there was some interesting stuff about like, you know, him talking about when he's asked about the cameras, he's like, no, I prefer things as I remember them, sort of thing. You know, that kind of tying into his
that's a nice hint.
refusal to accept the reality of his situation or take responsibility. And also like, I don't know, perhaps another meta layer of like, okay, if you're seeing something through the lens of a film, like which we are as audience members, like then what is the reliability of what we're being shown? Is it literal? You know, there's cool ideas in there. I did find it a bit long.
Really, I was surprised by how I wasn't distracted by that runtime and how it kind of shifts in certain ways that like
Just a
reset the momentum. But yeah, I'd happily watch this again soon. But what was I going to say? Yeah, shout out to that scene with the porno producer guy getting like killed, like the underside shot of him flying through the air and then him like being impaled on the edge of the table. I loved how great that looked, and then that understated reaction. Just wow, it's like a really weird, off-putting scene in the way they keep returning to it and showing it off as like, oh, this is cool. You just don't expect where it's going and the way it does it, especially.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm still surprised watching it. Like there are so many things I always forget just because it feels so random in the sequence of events. Like, oh yeah, that guy gets his head just like slams it right into that table.
Yeah. He tripped.
Oops.
Oopsie. I'm giving this one, unless we have more to say about it, I'm fine with ratings.
No,
I'm
ready to rate.
I'm giving this one a 7 out of 10.
Oh,
It was good. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I'm just people think I hate Lynch. I don't. I just don't connect with his films in the same way. and I'm not like engrossed in them in the same way that other people are. Like most of his films I've given a 7. It's just people get mad that I don't give him a 10 and that I'm not like taking the entire thing as seriously as other people through no fault of my own. I'm just sharing my experience, but yeah, people, he's got some fanboys for sure. He's got some stands.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's earned though. I love that surreal nature of it, how sort of esoteric and mystical they feel, and like they're these, you can kind of project so much onto it and unpick it and come up with your own interpretations, and everyone enjoys sharing their theories on it. It's so much fun, and I keep saying creative, but it is just so creative the way it's put together. This would be a low 4-star for me. Can I out of 10? I thought this was excellent. Almost enjoyed it as much as Mulholland Drive, actually. I wasn't expecting to get as much out of it as I did.
Nice. Very cool. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10.
Hell yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Good movie.
It's a good.
Do you think I'm ready for Inland Empire?
Why not? Yeah, sure. Fuck it.
Yeah, just see the 3 hours long.
A lot of people hate it, but it does have some memorable imagery for sure.
I'll
It's
be
weird.
recommending all 3 seasons of Twin Peaks.
Fuck it.
Yeah, I do own that first season. I need to get to that. I really need to get to that.
Twin Peaks has got a really good
Twin
score.
Peaks.
I like the theme.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, everyone loves that theme.
Yeah, it's great. I'd continue Twin Peaks. I'll go through the whole thing eventually. I could do that.
You got to watch The Return. The Return is something else.
Yeah.
Right, let's do some questions then from the Sardonicast community. If you want to head over to the suggestion thread over there and leave questions for future episodes, just like Sarcastodon did. Since Jake recommended some books to you two based on your taste, what video games would you two recommend Jake based on what he's into? I would, for example, strongly recommend Disco Elysium to avid readers. Also, Jake, what is your opinion on games as a medium, since you haven't really mentioned them on your channel? You're a certified gamer, Jake?
Oh, man, I'm not a gamer at all. I don't know. I am open to suggestions, though, but I will not play them, most likely.
Do you like kind of like brain puzzle type things?
No. I like. You know what I like? I like to play Grand Theft Auto 5 and kill people with my car. But anything that's too challenging, I just get bored, and then I'm like, why am I working hard at this? I could be working actually.
Yeah. What about like Red Dead? You read lots of Western reviews, really?
No. I like Minecraft. I like Minecraft sometimes. I don't know. I guess I just it's a time thing. Like I never.
I hear you.
Got super into it, and when I was like a teenager, like I'd play games, like we had PS2 and everything growing up, but at a certain point, like, and especially now at this point in my life, I can't imagine myself, going, okay, I need to devote a lot of time into exploring this genre and exploring all these games that I know are probably fantastic and I would really enjoy, but it's just like, what are you gonna do at this point?
Well,
it's definitely a time sink.
One of my favorite games ever is The Witness. It is a puzzle game, but it's so much more profound. Like it's in terms of how like it engages with you and how you're expected to engage with it. It's basically like an exercise in how outside the box can you think, and like what perspective should you even be approaching how to solve things. Like it's one of the best games for like getting people to think in ways that they don't normally think. And I think that it's just like one of the coolest fucking things ever. Like that's one of my favorite one of my favorite experiences with video games ever is The Witness. It's just incredible.
The Witness. Is Harrison Ford in an Amish village?
Oh yes. It's that's it.
Cool. Okay, I'll play that.
Have you played Disco Elysium, Adam? That was mentioned in the comment. And that is one I
Everybody,
would highly recommend.
yeah.
It's one of a lot of like art. I'm like, man, it's so impressive they put this together. But that's one where I'm like, how did you make this? Like,
Everybody keeps recommending it to me. It's long, and so I haven't started it yet. All I know is that it's really
it's not as long as you
long.
think, though.
No?
But the way, yeah, because you can finish it quite quickly, actually. But it's more the
Oh.
way, the options you have available and the politics and philosophy it explores. It's like sophisticated in a way that you often don't see from the medium.
Okay.
And it's extremely replayable in that way. But yeah, that was incredible. There was one you just mentioned, GTA 5, Jake, and there was actually coincidentally a question from Worth Willingness 83 who says, "Have you heard of Grand Theft Hamlet? If so, how do you fellas feel about it? My friend group and I had a bit of an argument over the absurdity of watching GTA 5 gameplay in a movie theater in the terms director and film being tossed around. I've not seen the project myself, but is receiving a bit of buzz."
Yeah,
You
it's
guys
got
seen
great
the
reviews.
trailer for this? Yeah, I'd
Um,
watch this. It sounds
yeah,
hilarious.
I would watch it. It's on Mubi right now. I think Mubi actually, it's a Mubi original. Like they own the rights to it, I think. Yeah, I'm totally supportive of the idea that you can create a film out of anything. Like there's people have made films in VR chat, right? Like video games have become like an animation tool in many
Red versus
aspects.
Blue.
Yeah, exactly. That's the classic, the machinima, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's you can make anything out of anything. It just depends on your presentation and your goals and yeah, how it's executed.
I'd totally watch that. Yeah.
It's got great critic reviews, so
Yeah, I didn't realize it was like big enough to have critic reviews, but I'm hyped
yeah.
for that.
It was at a festival. It was at a few festivals, I think.
Yeah, I could check on that. Let's do another one from Tad Strange 2. Now that Kendrick Lamar has made being a hater cool again, I have to ask this question. What are some movies that you're very happy to see fail commercially and or critically?
Am I happy
I'm
to
not
see a
really-
movie fail?
Yeah, the Sonyverse. I'm happy about them failing.
It's funny.
I put my hands together and I when I got this question, I looked at Mufasa couldn't have made money, right? No, I'm wrong. Like it's made like hundreds of millions.
Of course.
So I can't even include that one.
Yeah, there's
Yeah, there must be something you put your hands together and be like, yeah, I'm glad this isn't being rewarded.
so even the worst films, I never find myself wishing for them to not be successful. It's just one of those things. Well, I do wish that certain things wouldn't be rewarded in the sense that, like, okay, if we reward something like Lion King 2019, Alien Romulus, you're telling them you want more. But there's nothing that I'm like, I never find myself wishing something wasn't made. I guess just maybe the residual effects of its success are bad. The biggest example I can think of having felt that way about a movie is probably Saw Spiral, because they wasted precious fucking time with Tobin Bell just
I
dicking
know.
around doing Chris Rock's
That's sad.
nonsense. So I guess I'm glad that wasn't successful, but at the same time, I wish that wasn't even made. They were wasting precious fucking time, you fucking idiots, you assholes. Can't believe you.
Yeah, isn't there reporting that Bell he's getting up there now? They're
Yeah,
struggling
exactly.
to put something together for his next film. But yeah, that is a shame. I guess I could integrate this one from Butter 467. Not counting Marvel or Star Wars, are there any movie franchises you'd be happy to see end? I feel that way about that Jurassic World bullshit.
Oh yeah.
We just leave it alone. Oh my god, like. But again, they make so much money. That's why they keep doing it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to end it; just make it better. You can make a Jurassic Park movie and just have it good. You don't have to end it. Just stop making shit.
That's too hard. That's much too hard for them to do.
I'd be good with
leave it.
Halloween, the Halloween franchise
Yeah.
ending for a long time. Let's give it like 30 years before we
here's
touch
one.
that again.
Here's one: Star Wars, easy, done.
They said not
Yeah.
Marvel or Star Wars.
Oh well, fuck. Never mind. All right. Too easy.
Oh my god. Pookie Dot says, you guys have said that you write notes during films. Have you watched a movie so boring, so dull, that you begin to draw while watching?
No, because I don't draw really. Alex, this might be for you.
Yeah, this is more for me. Yes, like Like that last like Planet of the Apes. That's like a perfect like drawing movie. You know.
I thought you said you
I love
enjoyed
that
it.
Yeah, I did enjoy it. I can enjoy it and draw
Oh.
a picture at the same time.
It's like a building furniture movie.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Like
Okay.
you'll build furniture, I might draw a little doodle or something. Yeah, I think there's like a category for that.
Okay.
Do you ever like doodle or anything like that, Jake? Or are you more like Adam, like a
Are you a doodler or a diddler?
like the new Marvel movie? Ooh.
I lock in completely. I'm like, I'm not looking at my child. I'm not listening to anything. I have my headphones on. And
Child
if
goes in
anything
the
happens
box.
outside of my field of vision, then that's their problem, you know. I think if a movie is really bored, then I will probably just start drinking alcohol, you know. That'll make it go down smooth. So there you go.
Yeah, I think it's more of a me thing. Like when I was like 16, 17, I would like play Halo while watching like a movie. Just all this stimulation at the same time. So maybe that's more of a me thing.
Yeah.
I respect movies too much to like have it on as like a background thing. I don't know.
I respect
I like
certain movies for sure. There's some I don't respect.
No, I'll do that.
enough.
Like I sometimes just put like Stalker on the projector and just like have it playing.
Yeah.
And don't necessarily sit down and watch the whole thing. Like just have it there for the atmosphere.
Yeah. I you know, it is a valid experience to say like, okay, the movie didn't suck me in enough and therefore I'm now building furniture while the movie is playing. You know, because that does speak to your experience with the film. There's some things like, I don't know, maybe I have ADHD, maybe my brain is too neurospicy or some shit. I have no fucking idea. But there's some movies where like, there's a good chunk of movies actually, where like watching it and giving it my complete full attention feels like abuse. Like I feel victimized from the film. I'm like, you can't fucking trick me, you piece of shit. Like and that's not like, oh, going into it before it starts sort of thing. That's like, okay, it's been 20 minutes. What are you showing? I'm trying my best. And even if you know, this is something that happens within my own brain. If I'm in a theater, there's no other distractions, you know, no phone, whatever, nothing. The same thing will happen in my mind. I'll catch myself being like, oh, wait, I was just thinking about all of my plans for the week for the past 10 minutes. And not through any like intentional action, not because I'm like, oh, I don't respect this movie enough. I'm going to start thinking about other things. It's like, oh, wow, I catch myself doing it because the movie is just so nothing. It's showing me things I've already seen. It's just not engaging sort of thing. That like, yeah, it doesn't really matter whether or not there's like a physical in-universe thing I'm doing or sense of distraction, I guess, in a literal sense. Like same thing is happening in my brain. It just really depends on
that's
the movie.
why a film being like dull or uninteresting is like just the worst thing to me, like the most middling of middling. Like when it's I need to be engaged through it being exceptionally good or bad in some way.
Exactly.
It's just when that dull is right in the middle, I can't do it. Like I do the exact same thing. My mind starts wandering and start thinking about laundry I got to do and all like just stuff that's irrelevant to the film, and then like I do the same thing. I catch myself going like, oh shit, like I just haven't paid attention for like the last minute because this is so like dull or whatever it might be.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's like a biological reality to that. Like that's how the human brain works. Like if you're exposed to the exact same stimuli, you get used to it, right? Like you don't smell the inside of your nose or taste water or the air sort of thing, right? Like if you're just exposed to the same thing, you get used to it. That's just how our brains work, and you know, some people might experience it more than others when viewing media, but that's just a biological thing.
And it's not just like the length of a film or whatever, because like I put on The Brutalist again and rewatched it the other day, and it just flew by, and it's like a 3.5 long film, and I'm like transfixed to it the entire time, and I want to like pick it apart and break it down. It's part of like why, like we said in the Emilia Pérez conversation, that you were picking apart all this stuff about the audio design and whatnot, but for me, like I just, if I'm not into it, I'm not going to be doing that to that degree unless I'm watching it again and again, and I'm not going to do it if I'm thinking about if I left the oven on or whatever. Yeah.
Just give me something to chew on. There's certain things that, you know, I value that I want to chew on. And if I am not given those things or anything, and I'm just kind of like detached with no moments of like even thinking something's interesting, then it's like, okay, my brain's just going somewhere else. I'm sorry. Like I literally can't help it. It's like, if you're reading like a really boring book and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't remember what I read for the past 3 pages. Like the words appeared in my head, but I didn't absorb any of them. It's like same thing with a film.
Yeah. Well, speaking of books, Jake inspired me to start reading Blood Meridian.
Nice.
Whoa.
Oh, dude. I've read like 1 chapter and I'm already like, Jesus Christ, really? So yeah, I'll report back.
I mean,
that's I get on with that.
That's cool. I mean, are you connecting with it, or is it just kind of like what the fuck?
I love how like the way he writes is just like so envious of like that control of the English language. But yeah, man, it's heavy, it's dark, it's real dark. Yeah.
Oh man, this is exciting. This is an exciting development. I'm going to be annoying you about this now. I hope you realize.
No, please do. Yeah, and I've got like Butcher's Crossing like open in a tab. I saw there's like a goofy Nick Cage movie they made based on it. I'm not going to watch that. Yeah. I'm not going to watch that. Don't worry.
Now you got to play Halo, Jake.
Okay, yeah. What game should I play? Can you guys agree on one game? I mean, I'll check out The Witness, the Harrison Ford game. But is there anything else, Alex, that I should check out?
If time wasn't an issue, I think you would like Red Dead 2. Honestly. But yeah, that or Disco Elysium.
I don't know if that's a game for people that don't play games, though.
That's the thing. It's like a real high barrier to entry where the Disco Elysium isn't. There's like no real time. Like you don't have to be good at anything. It's more like a D&D. Dice rolls and choices.
We might come up with some more suggestions another day. We'll think about it.
I like Tetris.
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah, classic. Should we do one more here?
Let's do it.
I really like this one from Jack the Great, 98. If you could go back in time to the early decades of cinema, maybe 1900 to 1940s, what modern movie would you show people of the time? My pick would probably be Enter the Void. Not necessarily one of my favorites, but certainly a pretty mind-blowing audiovisual experience that I would kill to see an older audience react to.
Sorry, what year?
Just,
1940?
Let's say 1910.
1910? Okay.
1910.
Human Centipede 2.
No, I think in something like really visual effects heavy, like Avatar. Like
Avatar would be.
They'd have like panic attacks.
Okay, wait.
Like, they wouldn't be able to comprehend it.
Emilia Pérez.
Mars and his moms. Yeah.
Oh my god.
See, here's the thing. There's. I've always thought about this. Like, when the further you go back in time, in terms of like the language of cinema and filmmaking and like what was possible, like what people did and what, certain things were valued of just being like, oh wow, they achieved this effect, or, not everything had like a perfect like narrative sense or structure. You could there's a point in time you could go back to where like The Room would be the best movie. Like if The Room was the first movie ever made, it would be a masterpiece. Right?
I disagray. I disagree with that completely.
If it was the first movie ever made, you don't think it would be the best movie? What are you talking about?
No way.
What?
No, there are great early movies from the 1910s.
But I said the first.
No. If it was the first, people would be like, that's it. That's cool that they, have color somehow. And yeah, how did you do that? That's really fascinating.
Something and play it.
It would be like The Birth of a Nation. It would be like, exactly. Oh wow, that's technically innovative, but maybe let's not see that anymore.
Yeah. If it was the first movie, it would be the best movie. That's a factual statement.
How different would film history be?
I'm thinking like even older, like if you travel back in time with like an iPad with Batman v Superman on it, like that would create religions, it would like change the course of everything if you showed that to like
Skibbity Toilet
Greek philosopher. Yeah, the whole Skibbity Toilet series. Change history.
Oh my god.
Man.
People would be preparing for a war with toilets.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think people would
Or
just
they'd be
kill
praying
themselves.
to them. Yeah, yeah.
I think everyone would just kill themselves.
Yeah. If that footage of the train coming like made everyone freak out, like what are they gonna do if they see Avatar 2, you know?
Oh man.
Yeah, I don't know.
Especially if you prefaced it with like, this is real. Like this is a message from the future. Like
yeah. It'd be interesting just like using like technology in a way, just, technology that didn't exist in filmmaking and then showcasing that. Because,
Yeah.
you look early computer animation, heavily used in like 90s films. We can look at that retrospectively and be like, ooh, ugh, right? Ugh. Some of these scenes, like it's just really jarring. It's like so obviously computer animated. But a lot of this is just dependent on like what people are used to. Like if it's something people haven't seen before, then it is more difficult to differentiate and to with less of an understanding of how it works and with less better examples to compare things to, things are more convincing. Like at the time, a bad effect was very likely a good effect just because people had less of an understanding of how it worked and less to compare it to. So you could take.
I honestly, I mean, I think that people would be more jarring. It would be more jarring for people in 1910s to see the changing social attitudes and like mental, like how society and the world has changed rather than the technical stuff. I do think like that would be jarring, but I think they'd be like, oh, it's the future. Of course, they have different techniques and they can film this stuff, but it'd be like, okay, these people are existing in a world that has seen World War I and World War II. All of our ideas about class and gender and race, it's all on its head. I think that
Everything's
would be
woke
the
now.
more. Yeah, they'd be like, "What's this woke shit? What is this?
Yeah.
Where's the Kaiser?"
All into culture warriors. Yeah.
Yeah. How come these people have rights? What the fuck? What the frick? Show them Brokeback. Show them a gay movie. Show them Short Bus. I don't know. There's no wrong answer for this question.
No, it's interesting regardless. Yeah.
Or show them a film that is like intentionally trying to look like an older film.
Show them
just, like,
The
blends
Artist
in.
from 2011.
Yeah. The Lighthouse.
Ooh, yeah.
That would fuck people up. All right, we did it. Thank you.
We did it.
Bye.
And right, it's my recommendation, right?
We all believe so.
We believe
Yes.
so. I'll take it then.
Yeah.
I've had this film on my mind. I've been obsessed with Helldivers lately, so I want to talk about Starship Troopers from 1997.
Okay, cool.
There's some interesting kind of political implications and stuff that I want to talk about as well. Yeah, let's go. 1997, Paul Verhoeven, Starship Troopers. Have you seen it, Jake? I didn't see a rating on Letterboxd.
I think I saw it when I was a kid. I have not seen it since, so it's going to be like a
Cool.
new movie for me. Yeah.
Nice.
Cool. If you don't want to be spoiled for Starship Troopers, 1997, Paul Verhoeven, however you pronounce that, I don't know. Watch it before the next episode comes out. These episodes come out every 2 weeks. You can listen to them early, support the show. Go to patreon.com/Sardonicast or sardonicast.com. Sign up for premium. It's only some dollars a month. What is it, $3?
Yeah.
That's nothing. That's like basically nothing.
We need the cash. My fee is very high. That was my
Yeah.
condition,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think these are going to be impacted by the tariffs, so you're good. Also, you can just click on YouTube. Just hit the members button.
Yeah.
Or
We
go to
love our members.
We love our members.
Mm-hmm.
Swollen. There's also a Sardonicast highlights channel. You can check that out. Probably. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a happy rumple pump.
Yeah. Keep that rumple clean.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye.